Welcome back to the Take a Step podcast. Guys, today we've got a special episode planned. I feel like I've been saying that a lot recently, but it's true. They've all been special recently. But guys, today we've got an inside look into my conversation with Tommy Newberry at the most recent Take a Step workshop. Tommy is he's a New York Times bestseller. He's written multiple books. He's the founder and head coach at the 1% Club, which works with high-performing entrepreneurs on how to really pursue their full potential, personally, professionally, spiritually. So today, like I said, you get an inside look to my conversation where I have a one-on-one with him at the workshop live. He also takes a little Q&A, which you'll get an inside look to as well. So I know y'all enjoy this episode. Sit back, relax, enjoy Tommy Newberry at the most recent Take a Step workshop. One thing I'd love to just kind of kick off the conversation with, Tommy, is, you've been working with these guys for a long time. I'm sure many different personalities ring through, but what are some of is there one characteristic or are there two or three characteristics that you've seen to be, consistent with a lot of these top performers that you work with?
I think there's a lot. The one that stands out to me, and I probably would have answered it differently a number of years ago, but the people that seem to perform the highest that I've observed, and particularly that I've worked with, take more action. There's one, I'm thinking of Ryan in particular.
Oh, yeah.
But so there's some clients that I'll work with and have worked with who soak up, I can tell they're soaking up what I'm saying or trying to ask them about or communicating. And as a coach, you're doing a lot more asking than you are teaching or saying or preaching or something like that. But some will take notes and they'll say, this was very beneficial to me, or this really helped me, or this was good stuff today. And then the ones that I have found to be rather remarkable are the ones who text me a few hours after the workshop or at 5 a.m. the next morning, and they said, yesterday really moved me, here's what I've done already. Or I had that conversation with my wife, or I waited till dinner digested and I got that workout in today rather than saying I'm going to start it tomorrow. So I think action, and a close second would be clarity about what it is they want, why they want it, and how they're going to get it. But if I had to just pick one, it's action, because when you do something, you at least get feedback, which then can tell you just did something not helpful, or you did something that's helpful, but you at least have feedback. If you just sit at a crossroads, you don't get any feedback. 24 hours later, you're just as dumb or as smart as you were before.
How have you seen the difference between somebody who's very, their nature is to be very action focused versus somebody who maybe possess all the smarts in the world, have all the degrees, but may not be as prone to taking action as somebody else who may not possess the same level of IQ that somebody else does? Because I feel like a lot of people, what keeps them from taking action is because they don't feel like they're equipped. They don't feel like they have the smarts or the ability to go out and do something. So where do you see the difference between possessing the actual head knowledge versus somebody that's willing to actually go out and take the action?
I almost, if I understand the question correctly, I think being action-oriented is a skill that you can learn. Some people are more maybe prone to it, and this, I think, is a paradox, is like the person I was thinking of. Not that this person lacks in intelligence at all, but he might lack in the intelligence that academics revere, or that we might think are, wow, that guy's a really brilliant person. Instead, he has action intelligence. He has an ability to decipher whether something is a productive idea, and then he just takes action on it, almost mind-blowing action. But he doesn't take action on everything. He just, maybe if he was here, he would have heard one or two things. He would have zoned in on those one or two things, and then he would, immediately after the workout, he would begin making plans or taking the first step. Again, it just kind of naturally fits, taking that step to do something right away. So I think it's a whole different type of intelligence. Why did I mention that he's maybe not like an academic gift to the world? I think that works to his advantage because he's less familiar with all the limitations that you learn about in school, all the things that you can't do, all the reasons you're not qualified, the time frames that are invented, like you got to wait till you're this old to do this and this old to do this. No, you need 10 years of experience here. Those are just made up things. And so he's maybe not as bought into all of that academic stuff. So he doesn't know. And he just takes action as a result.
Yeah, and I think like that's the importance of the clarity piece that you were talking about too, right? Where's kind of that turning point behind having enough clarity on knowing what to do versus being prone to take action? Like if I just take action on anything and everything, then there's probably a lot of wasted time. Well, I might learn something. There's probably a lot of wasted time. So how do you help people first clarify and then take action? Like when is it time to take that first step after they clarify what they actually need to be doing? Like
immediately. Like I don't know where I first heard that, but this is could be whatever number you want to put on it financially, but it might be spiritually. There is a huge benefit to doing something after this today than waiting till tomorrow to do it. Or you listen to a sermon and then you go communicate with somebody or say you're sorry to somebody, or you go pray for somebody, or you go set up your devotion for the next morning. You go do that immediately. There's just some momentum. You should never leave the scene of a change of thought without implementing a change of action. Or it may be hard to regain it. But how do you develop clarity? Clarity is something you can't just snap your fingers and have. But if I ask you all to write down, or what Josh asked earlier, if you go to bed tonight with your life like it is, good and bad, blessings and not so much blessings, and you wake up tomorrow and everything's perfect, you jot those few things down and just know that that's version 1. That's V1. And then as you get new feedback, update it. And then you're constantly course correcting. So my perspective has changed on that. My son Ty that works with me has pushed me a lot on that, is like, you don't ever get to the exact right answer. So you have a target, but you're constantly course correcting. And your life would be more like how the iPhone has evolved than some product that has just arrived and they kind of think they're satisfied with it. So you have a target, but even as you have a good life right now, you're working to make it a better life. And then when you get there, there's another version coming, and then another version coming, and that keeps you growing. But it's clarity on not just what you have in your life, but the man you must become before you can have those things. Because the have will somewhat take care of itself if you focus on who you're becoming. And if you choose the right goal and you miss it, you'll at least have the benefit of who you became as a result of the pursuit. If you choose the wrong goal, meaning you do something that was superficial or it's not leading you where you want to go, or you follow the crowd, or you conformed rather than let yourself be transformed, then if you don't reach that goal, like, you're still going to be affected by pursuing the wrong goal. So as early in life as you can figure out, this is what I'm about, this is who God wants me to become as far as I can tell, then in light of that, what kind of goals should I be setting for my life and for my year and for my quarter?
Have you heard the saying, be, do, have?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's what comes to mind through that. It's like so many people want to have the thing, and then they'll do the things, and then they hope to become the person through the process, when it should be the complete reverse. We must become the man who can do the thing that can then have the result, and everybody reverses that.
And that's the sequence. So sometimes you can do the right things, but you do them in the wrong sequence, you don't get the result that you're looking for. But if you focus on the being, and it's hard to do these days, but it's hard to do it, and it's easy to do it. It's just, you got to do it. Like, who do you want to become? Jot down a few qualities, almost like you've already started doing, but I would take it a step further and say, define what each of those qualities means in your eyes. Because if you say you've got a value of honesty, and I say I've got a value of honesty, or you're dating somebody who has this value and you think you share the same values, well, you might share the same values only in name only. Because the name, the label doesn't really matter. It's what is her definition of honesty? What's your definition? What's your definition of wealth or freedom? And knowing what those values mean is more important than the word that you use to describe them, I think. Yeah.
What do you think separates average from top performers? People that might be good husbands, might run a good business, might be in good shape. Like, what do you think that distinctive factor is that separates those people who are good but haven't yet become great?
I don't know for sure, but I would suspect that they don't know great is possible for them. So they compare themselves to others, and if they get ahead of enough others, they feel, which is the wrong model on so many different levels, but if they're ahead of most of the people that they see or hang out with, then they feel like, well, job accomplished. But if they shoot for something huge, or they have a group of people where everybody in the group is smarter than they are, everybody in the group has more money, everybody in the group has a stronger marriage. I mean, that's really the kind of group. It's not like every group you're in, but you want to have that so that you're not always the top dog in your group. So then that kind of circles back to growth. Are you growing? So I think some people do quite well, have a great life or a good life, but they stop growing. And so then they don't get to realize what the best life could be. There's kind of a silly example, but like if you've only had ground beef and you've never had a filet, then the ground beef's damn good. But then when you have the filet, damn, I never knew about this. And I think we're all of us are walking around with, I never knew about this. I never knew it could be this good. And that is a byproduct of our beliefs.
Yeah,
you know?
I'm happy you said that, because that's kind of my next transition. Something that Darren shared earlier was on the topic of limiting beliefs. I think that constrains us so much from being able to push through, about being able to realize that there's a filet out there, right? So from what you've seen over the past, nearly 3 decades of working with top performers, like, what are some of those common limiting beliefs that you've seen have hindered people from pushing through to that next level?
There's a lot of them, because they're so varied, and some of them, it's kind of individualized. But if it's maybe for this group in here, I would say the first one's kind of a spiritual belief, but it's thinking, you consciously may answer that you think this is not true, but what you consciously answer doesn't really matter. It's underneath what you truly believe, which is like, I'm not good enough as I am as of this moment. Which is easy to be like that if you don't have the faith piece and you realize that you're a beautiful, wonderful child of God as you are at this moment. The second one might be that I'm too young to do something really big. And there's enough evidence now, there wasn't when I was growing up, but there is now, that age doesn't really matter, nor do academic credentials. More and more of my clients who are business owners are saying they could care less what somebody's academic history is. They just want to understand that they can get results.
Well, I want to, just to cut you off, in the table discussion over here earlier, Graham was literally sharing this exact thing and talking about, sometimes I feel like because of my age or length of time in the industry, and so many other people have been in it for decades and decades and decades, sometimes that causes me to have a certain view of my work or my abilities because I don't feel like I'm old enough or have been in long enough. And my first boss in my very first job, I was 23 years old working on a sales floor with people in their mid 30s up to mid 40s who have been doing it for a long time. And I was seeing a little bit of success, but I definitely still had some of that imposter syndrome of feeling like, am I really good enough? And that was keeping me from being able to push through to the next level. But one thing he said to me, he was like, Josh, I'll tell you something that someone told me when I was starting out. He said, if you're good enough, you're old enough. Like age doesn't, like, results are agnostic when it comes to your age, when it comes to how long you've been doing it. If you're good enough, if you have the skills, if you possess the abilities to actually go out and generate the results and solve problems, then age and length of time in an industry doesn't matter.
Yeah, I think the old model, and old being like me, the old model is there's nothing wrong with like experience, and there's nothing wrong with getting a good degree unless you're depending on that. But the old model was there is this preconceived trajectory of time that you had to live within, and that knowledge is distinct from skill. And now it's more like you just need to get clear on what it is you want to create or produce in the marketplace, if we're talking business here, and then do your research, easier today than ever before, and find out what are the prerequisite behaviors that you need to take action on a repetitive basis, and then do it. And then it's kind of like the glory goes to the bold. Just do it. Meanwhile, there's somebody analyzing whether it's possible, sitting over in the corner, who is going to end up working for that person. They're analyzing their dreams rather than taking action on their dreams. So you can there are a few limitations, but there's not many. You can, if you're going to practice medicine, there are some prerequisites that you have to do. But for the vast majority of people, you just see the goal, figure it out, and then implement, and then goof it up, and then tweak, and then goof it up, not as bad, and then tweak again, and then rinse and repeat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like all that stems from your beliefs and like your thoughts initially. And one of the main takeaways I had from the 4-8 principle, which is your New York Times bestseller, was your thoughts shape your actions. And I'd love for you to kind of just give a brief overview of like why you wrote the 4-8 principle, and like that book specifically, like how did you go about writing that, and what led that to be a New York Times bestseller? Okay,
so and for those, some of you may know what he's referring to when he says 4-8, but a lot of people don't. It's 4:8 as in a Bible verse. So it's Philippians 4:8 is what that's based on. So it's the 4:8. Doesn't sound good when you say it like that, but it's the 4-8 principle, and it's based on a comment from the Apostle Paul. And let me tell you what he was doing when he wrote this. He was in prison. He was chained. He was under guard, and according to most scholars, he was knee-deep to waist-deep, depending on the translation, in sewage. And he said, finally, brothers, whatever is lovely, pure, true, gracious, just, if there's any excellence, if there's anything worthy of praise, then dwell on these things, or meditate on these things, or think on these things, or the Amplified Version is my favorite. It says, fix your mind on these things. So like if there's something in here that has resonated with you this morning and this afternoon, and you wanted to make it a part of who you are, the way to do that is to meditate upon it, to sit with it, to soak it in, to be a sponge and let it sit with you. If you want to see more positive qualities in your spouse, dwell on her positive qualities. If you want to see more flaws in your spouse, then remind yourself and rehearse her shortcomings and ask her to do the same for you. Don't do that. But in other words, we see more of what we remind ourselves of. So if you were to get up every morning and say, what's great about my life right now? What's awesome about my wife? and you were to jot it down, then the rest of that day, maybe longer, but at least for the rest of that day, you'd be noticing things that you previously weren't noticing. And you can do that everywhere. And the reason it produces more joy in your life is we feel what we dwell upon. So if you're feeling rotten, there is a chance that your life is rotten, but more than likely, it means that you've been dwelling on the broken pieces of your life, which everybody has, which does you no good to dwell on them. You can address them, but it does no good to dwell on them. So we feel what we dwell upon. Each moment's a new beginning with your thought life too. So you could just be bent out of shape all morning. Whenever you hit the switch, which you're free to do, you can change direction. In other words, just as easy as flipping a light switch on. You can think, I've been down in the dumps, I've been holding grudges, I've been focusing on what's missing, I'm focusing on what's wrong with myself, but in just an instant, does not require any approval or authorization. You can say, I'm going to start dwelling on and reminding myself of my strengths, my blessings, not my blunders, the things that are beautiful, not the things that are broken, the things I'm looking forward to, not the things I'm dreading. And you can make that a habit over a period of time. And the easiest way that I found to do it is, I think we were talking about it earlier, is make sure your inputs are inputs that are going to be productive for you. Inputs meaning what you're reading, watching, listening to, mainly, and scrolling. So what you read, watch, listen to, scroll, and the conversations you have. And if that's like so easy today. I had to read a book back in the day, or I had to put in a cassette. My first presentations that were recorded are on audio cassette. Seriously. Y'all even know what I'm saying? and then CDs, I thought I was really cutting edge, you know? What was the Bible verse you used? Philippians 4:8. And the ones that I spoke about without naming them, in addition, are from 2 Timothy. So we feel what we dwell upon is the basis kind of for that, and more understanding is, for God has not given us the spirit of fear. Great news. But what has he given us? Power, love, and a sound mind. And a sound mind is only possible if you fixate on the things that are working in your life. You fixate on your potential. You fixate on the possibilities. And that does not at all mean you don't sit down with the smartest people you can find, the most creative people you can find, and work on your problems. It just means you don't dwell on them. It's kind of like you have problem time. You go in a room and you go, it's going to sound kind of negative, but we're going to work on a problem. But then the whole rest of the time, you're focused on what you're grateful for, what you love about your spouse, what you're glad you're not going to wake up without tomorrow morning. And it becomes a part of you. And then the third piece is junk-proofing your mind. So guard your heart with all diligence, for out of it spring the issues of life. And it's like, if you take that verse, that proverb, guard your heart with all diligence, for out of it really comes your life, or springs the entirety of your life. It's not like a good suggestion. It's like better than that. I mean, imagine if it was like, do the best you can in guarding your heart because it's helpful in life. But I mean, it's really kind of a bold statement. Guard your heart. What is your heart? It's mainly referring to the unconscious, biblically. It's like, yes, how do you guard your heart? By guarding what goes in your mind. So the heart is not the beating cardiovascular muscle. It's your subconscious. So garbage in, garbage out. It's a negative way to say it, but the same acronym is good in, good out.
Yeah, and what goes in has a direct result on what we were talking about earlier with limiting beliefs or mindset, in other words.
It's the easiest way to change, because you can get in your car and choose what you're going to listen to. You can listen to the soundtrack of a great YouTube video, You can speed it up and metabolize it. You can listen. You couldn't do that with the audio cassettes. You can't do it with a hard book. You can't even really do it with a CD. But I mean, today you can pick something that is speaking to you and listen to it at high speed over and over and over again. And there were some that I did when I started my business in 1991 when I was 25 and I had no business starting the business. But that's a whole nother story. But I did it. And one way that I kept reminding myself that I wasn't too young is I listened to 2 or 3 audio cassettes over and over again. One of them was an audio cassette I kept in my car for a year straight. And except when other people were in my car, that's the only thing I listened to for that whole year. And then it was that person's ideas and thoughts and framework, but then it kind of became mine. And so it's so easy today to program yourself for good stuff.
One of the things you say all the time, mindset makes all the difference, right? Like,
Yep.
I think a lot of people hear mindset, and a lot of it comes from the culture we live in today with like inspiration, motivation is everywhere you look. And if you want to get fed, you can go anywhere and find good motivation and shape your mindset. But the saying makes all the difference, not just some difference, but it makes all the difference. Like I've heard you talk about it a little bit, but I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about that as far as like, what does that mean? Like how does mindset make every difference for me?
So, would you everybody agree in here that there's mindset material everywhere, right? So, danger, that's like a warning sign. Not that it exists everywhere, but you can get desensitized to it. The greatest asset somebody can have at any given moment is the right mindset, a winning mindset, a problem-solving mindset. And so we risk getting tone deaf to hearing messages about mindset. Those are the messages we ought to listen to probably the most because they affect everything about our being, from our marriage to our health, faith, business. And so would everybody also agree that mindset makes a difference in your life? Would you agree that mindset makes a lot of difference? The next step further is what we preach to our clients. It makes all the difference. And it's kind of a bold statement intentionally. What do you mean it makes all the difference? Well, how you interpret what's going on in your life, how the meaning you attach to a prospect hanging up on you or not emailing you back, or the meaning you attach to something your wife said, or something a doctor said to you, or some news story. However you interpret that affects you emotionally. And the odd thing is we often, due to some limiting beliefs that were kind of instilled in us early in life, we have an automatic response, like an automatic negative processing, and so we interpret things with a negative bent. She raised her voice at me, therefore, this and this is wrong, and we make a mountain out of a molehill, when we should have just interpreted it as, she must be stressed out. You know, you don't even have to say anything. You just have to always assume, for example, that God's got your back. And that, so if that was apparently most of the world would interpret that as a really negative, caustic comment. But you're going to interpret it as, that's growth trying to take place. Again, it would sound silly to verbalize that, but in your mind, what if you became the type of person that couldn't be rattled by what other people did, including your wife? And I'm not saying I've mastered that, but what if? Because this is the point where we talk about unreachable goals. No, I'm kidding. But just the practice of doing that. In other words, the attempt gamifies it. So she rolls her eyes at you. She is cold, whatever it is. What if you gamified it and she can't say anything or not do and not say anything that will change my day or my evening? I'm going to have a great evening regardless. I mean, what if you became the type of person that couldn't be rattled by other people?
Yeah, that's good.
I guess the question to that, Tommy, is how do you balance that without coming across that you're being insensitive? How do you see that she's struggling with something and maybe she rolled your eyes at you and she raised her voice and you're like, you know what? I'm just gonna have a smile on my face. But then she sees that and she's like, oh my gosh, he cares nothing about that.
That's a great question, and I didn't mean you necessarily have a smile on your face, but you wouldn't have a panic look on your face either, and you wouldn't be frowning or crying on the inside either. You legitimately, so the only advice I would know to give is to ask her to give you more information, not say it like that, but can you tell me more about what's gotten you upset? Or, I'm sorry you seem a little upset. Can you tell me more? But it doesn't really matter what she tells you. You're not going, I'm addressing it from your standpoint. You can be very sensitive, engaging, caring, comforting. You're just not going to let her or the kids or a business associate or the market change who you are intending to be before those moments occurred. So you wake up, you could do this every day if you want. You wake up and you say, today, no matter what happens, I'm going to make it a fun day and I'm going to get the most out of it and I'm going to move toward my goals. If the market crashes, somebody rear-ends my car and my wife slams the door in my face, I'm not going to like any of those things. And I certainly don't have to have a smile, but it's not going to change how I think about myself or my goals and hopes for the future, and it's not going to make me label my wife as this or label this or panic about the market, because we can't control the stock market any more than we can control our wives.
That's good. Yeah, and we'll open it up for a Q&A here in just a second. One question I want to make sure I address real quick before we cap it off. On brand with Take a Step. One of the like I shared at the beginning, a huge reason a lot of guys find themselves living this life of complacency where they're, always thinking what if, is because we've kind of fallen into the habit of making the comfortable decisions, which has led them to this life of complacency. So like for you, how can guys shift their mindset to allow them to begin to take more purposeful action around what they actually want to be doing and the man that they actually want to be becoming?
There are many things you can do, but one of them I think y'all are already doing here is getting around people who have similar goals and ambitions, who don't want to be a stat, who don't want to just be a number. But the first thing is have a clear set of long-term goals and or a purpose. I like going out a decade. You don't have to be hyper specific, but here's just a good framework. 10 years from now, and 10 things that I'd like to be true in my life 10 years from now that aren't true, 100% true today. Just 10 and 10. And then give yourself 10 minutes to come up with a list. And then do that maybe once a month or something. In other words, it doesn't have to be a big production. Just 10 things that I'd like to be true. So you'll be 29, right? So 10 things that you'd like to be true 10 years from now, and take 10 minutes to jot those down, and then a month from now, without looking at the previous list, that's a key thing, do it again. And then you're just constantly, it's like, what's in the next iPhone? What are we going to put in the next iPhone? And you're constantly revitalizing, and then you can save the old list and go back and see patterns.
ChatGPT 7 and 8.
Yeah. And then you hang out with people who are like-minded, hopefully with enough people that are further ahead in some way, and then flood yourself with positive mental nutrition, is what we call it. That is free. I mean, when you're working out or when you're in the car or when you're going for a run, that's your programming time. So you couldn't who programmed you when you were 15 and under, right? Some of it was like not bad programming, but it wasn't good programming. It was just kind of wishy-washy, or there was cancel each other out. Right now, you are 100% responsible on what you consume and what you, how you interpret what you consume and what beliefs you develop. You don't have to like transform yourself overnight, but you can, like a little baby transformation. It's by doing something different today than you did yesterday. And then rinse and repeat. I mean, that's all transformation is.
That's so good. Well, I want to take like another 10 or 15 minutes to open it up for a Q&A. I know some people came with some questions. We'll start over here with Michael. I know he had one.
So I think my biggest question is, in thinking about mindset stuff, like how do you fight imposter syndrome? Like, and I have two thoughts around this. Like, you know, I've been doing stuff in my field for like 6 or 8 years, but I still like will get down on myself and be like, we are horrible at this, and we're never gonna work again. And then that would be one side of it, and then two, like in a field like totally different. Like, I would love to write one day. Like, how have you seen things shift in the writing world, and what can that look like to possibly break through when there's so many resources and options and stuff out there today?
So the first one was, how do you deal with imposter syndrome? It's very common for men, for some strange reason, but that comes back to, you know, what are you wanting to be, or who do you think you are, and then you think you're an imposter to God? I mean, or who is thinking that they're the imposter? If you're thinking you're the imposter, what is the real you if the imposter is real? Then in other words, what is the imposter competing with? And so if you analyze it, you can break it down, and it's just like totally illogical. But then if you were in a rut of kind of thinking that, then I would, like for a month maybe, again, take a short period of time in the morning and start off every day with writing down with your hand 4 or 5 things that are evidence that you're not an imposter, so that you are beginning to program yourself that you're the real deal. But I've got clients who I'm 58, about to be 59 in a couple of months, and I've got clients who tell me that same thing who are older than me or a few years younger than me. So it's a common male thing. The second one about the writing is, so not only should I not have been doing my business at age 25 in 1991, but a year later, I started writing a book called Success is Not an Accident, the first version of it, and went to Florida during the 1996 Olympics in Atlanta. While everybody else was coming here, I went to Florida and I wrote like 80% of the book as a nobody, as an imposter. And then I finished it about a year later. So it came out on Halloween 1997. Success is Not an Accident. Change your choices, change your life. I self-published it because I knew there was no reason some publisher would buy my book at that point. But then over the next 9 years, I sold 120,000 of them myself, like out of the back of my car, to my network. And then I literally, like when people say they sold books, they mean a bookstore sold it or Amazon sold it. But I believe in the concept of, no, like truly you sell it. So I would call clients who trusted me, and I would say, would you buy 100 books? And send them to your best clients. And then I'd call somebody. So I did the deal like I was selling a service. And so I'd give them a deal and we'd ship them the books, and then books got out like that. And there was this company that came around right about that time called Amazon. And if it weren't for Amazon, I never would have gotten the 6 book contracts that I got after that. It's because I hustled and sold the book. I wrote it when I had no business writing it. I tried to mimic best-selling books as best I could. And then I used my relationships across the country to get it out there. And then, because I put myself in the game, I didn't have anything to do with Amazon, obviously. But Amazon happened to be there. But what if I thought, well, there's no way? I was just willing to sell 1,500 books and have it for Ty and his 2 older brothers to read. I mean, I've started off all my books by writing Dear and then one or all of my sons' names. And then the ideas just flow out. It's like, what if I was dead and I wanted them to understand my philosophy of life? What would I say? But you don't have to take it with like all serious subjects. It's just, for me, that got over the writing issue. So real quickly, I was a C student in English in high school. I did get a couple of A's in college, but it's just total BS. I just learned to write. And the main way I learned to write was listening to all those audio cassettes where I heard people verbalizing, which worked with me. It may not work with everybody, but I heard them, they were so eloquent, and they used words to paint pictures. I just thought it was cool as hell. And I could read, after I got out of college, I could read what I wanted to read, not what somebody told me I should be reading. And then I fell in love with reading, and then I started writing, and it was bad, and then I got better, and then I just said, what the heck, I'll write a book. So now the market is very, very weird. When my books were republished before 8 Principles came out in 2007, there were 500 books being published every single day. It's close to 5,000 because of self-publishing. Amazon has a big self-publishing route. But the thing is, if you have a passion for writing, you should write. And then expose yourself to the world, and the people that resonate with your writing will find you. I mean, I'm still working on that because I came along at a different time, but if you need to write, if God's telling you to write, then write. And then put it out there, and then people will go, I love that writing. You have an audience. I think everybody in here has an audience out there because we have the whole globe to work with. Does that help?
Thank you also just for being here.
You're welcome.
Invest in this. Really appreciate that. You talked a lot about those audiobooks and the cassette tapes and just being in the car, you would listen constantly and over on repeat. Who were some of those impactful authors that you would listen to and read starting out, and who are they today?
Probably the one that inspired me the most was a guy, he's 25 years old. He's 20 years older than me, probably. His name is Brian Tracy, and he's probably written 50 books. If you know of a guy named John Maxwell is kind of on the Christian leadership side. He used to be a pastor. He influenced me a lot. I know him a little bit. But Brian Tracy, in one of his books that I read, I think it was called Maximum Achievement, when I was just getting started out, it had a line in the book. It said, hey, find the most successful person in a field that you're in, and then contact them and tell them you'd like to buy them lunch. So this was in, I think, 92 or 3. I read that, and I thought, I'm going to see if he'll receive that. So I wrote a letter. It was typed. Y'all know what that is? It was typed. It was beautiful. I put my nice card I was so proud of that was silly, and I said, Dear Brian, I've just finished Maximum Achievement. I've listened to all of your audio cassettes. He lived in San Diego. I lived in Atlanta. And I said, on page such and such, you say to do this. Well, I'm doing it. And I see that you're going to be in Atlanta for a big event on October 3rd. Could I buy you coffee and ask you some questions during that time? 2 days later, his assistant, Barbara, I still remember her name, called and said, Brian would love to have a cup of coffee with you, but he only has 20 minutes. And we met at the Cobb Waverly, where the event was, in the coffee shop in the bottom, and he spent an hour and a half with me. And I had a little recorder. This was before the phones. And I said, do you mind if I record it? No. And he goes, not at all. And I recorded it. I had it transcribed. It saved me years of effort because he was the top dog. He was a peer of Tony Robbins. Tony Robbins is still around because the age difference. But Think and Grow Rich was fantastic. My dad had me read that along with As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. Probably one book I've read more than any other is As a Man Thinketh by James Allen, which is based on a proverb, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. So if you translate that as a man believes he is in his subconscious, so he becomes. But that's one of these books. It takes you an hour and a half to read it unless you're going really slow. you start highlighting it, and then you realize it's futile. It's no point. Because it's like each page is filled. Have you ever read a book like that? And it's like, there's no point in highlighting it because everything is highlighted. So the solution to that is just rereading it or re-listening to it. Brian Tracy, Earl Nightingale. So these are like the early people. Michael Gerber is fantastic on the business side. The E-Myth Revisited.
Right, Company Crisis. Is that?
I don't think so. Gerber is kind of a rough around the edges guy who talks about business systems and what would happen if you had to run this like it were going to be the prototype for 4,000 gyms just like it. What would you change? And he's not even saying you have to have 4,000. He's just saying that kind of thinking helps you to systematize and build the right processes. Does that help? Does that give you an idea? And I think Tony Robbins' personality doesn't resonate with me, but he's the king dog. And I mean, and his content is phenomenal. So I still listen to some of him. He's just kind of an interesting character, but I think his material is fantastic.
It was great to see John Maxwell be presented the Lifetime Award at the summit this year.
He's awesome. I have spoken on stage with him 3 or 4 times, and we've been using one of his old designers in our business for about 22 years. But he's just great. He writes in sound bites, you know.
Let's get another 2 or 3 questions. Anybody got anything?
So they say if you surround yourself with high performers, your performance increases by 15%. And then if you surround yourself with low performers, your performance decreases by 30%. So why do you think that is?
You mean, in other words, it does more damage?
Right.
I've never heard that. I wouldn't doubt it. But I used to do this when I would speak to like students at an assembly or something. I would find I would be talking about the power of association. I kind of put it into a principle which says we become like the people that we hang out with the most. That's kind of part 1. We become like the people we hang out with the most. What does that mean? We take on the habits, the attitudes, the mindset, the worldview, even the body language and mannerisms of the people we spend most of our time with. But that's not just this kind. This is good. That's not just this reference group. It's also what you listen to. Like, you can take on the habits and the characteristics of the people that you read the most, of the podcasts that you listen to most, of the people you follow, if you really absorb it.
Good podcast, by the way, if anyone's
Very good. And so here's what I did, though, with the assembly, and it was a great visual, which is I would get what I saw to be the heaviest person in the group. This is a short version of it. And I would say, come up here. I'm going to lift you up onto the stage with one hand. And people would think, well, how are you going to do that? So I'd pick the person. They wouldn't know why I was picking him, but I didn't want it to pick, like a 90-pound girl. And so I have some big guy come down, and I'd pretend like I'd build up the suspense and pretend like I was like it was some kind of trick or something that I was going to do. And then I tried as hard as I can, and I would do like this, and then it became obvious. And I said, well, how about you now as I'm pulling you, and the stage would be, from this far to this far. So at first I told him to be dead weight. Then I said, now you step up as I'm pulling you up. And he came right up, no matter how big he was. Then I found the little tiny girl, and I called her up, and I said, just interlock your pinky finger with mine and see if you can pull me off the stage. And somewhere in the 185 to 200 pound range, and a 100-pound girl. But she had a point of what? Leverage, and would pull me down. And I'd literally fall or jump off the stage, hopefully. And I had a class of 8th graders wrote me 100 letters, one back about 15 years ago. And almost all of them mention that one thing. Now, they were guided by their teachers. Make sure you mention one part of the presentation. So maybe they just all told each other, mention when he pulled the person, off the stage. But that's the power of who you associate with. Every single person is like an elevator. People are like elevators. They're either taking you up or they're pulling you down. And a softened version, which I don't like, is some people are kind of neutral. Everybody's either lifting you up in one way or another, or they're pulling you down. And that doesn't mean you can't help people. But the gauge I like to use is if people are stepping up, then they're coachable. If they're not, if they're resistant, then they can't be helped at that moment in time. They can't be helped. But they might be the following day or the following year. Does that help?
It's good. We got time for like one or two more questions. Got one.
How do you know God's called you to do something? You know you should put all your effort in that one thing. Because I feel like so many people get caught up with so many things, trying to figure out what they like to do, what they love to do, and just end up wasting their time.
I wish I were qualified to answer that. I don't know for sure, but I think when you give it a lot of prayer and reflection, and there's something, it's almost like if you haven't ever experienced feeling like God called you to do something, then he may be calling you to do something, probably is, but you may not know, you may not connect his calling to what you're experiencing or what you're feeling at that moment. And so you would have to go back to like some general parameters. Is this serving others? Is this using your time and talent and interest? If you have godly men and women around you that can feed in, that are know more about the Bible than you and have longer time horizons in mind, they can all help you figure it out. But I've told this to my son and others. When I write, I feel like God, not always, but there are times when I'm writing and a phrase or a way to articulate a sentence comes out of nowhere. That is like, and it's an impactful statement. It's like 5 years later, I find out that actually is impacting lots of people. But I can remember where I was when I wrote it. I was at my office, or I was in my home office, or I was in a hotel room. I can remember certain sentences and things, and I feel like God speaks to you through your desires, but so does the other side. God speaks to you through your talents, your weaknesses, through fun, like how much fun is it, and through something interesting, which is being in being here is being in the gym is a good metaphor for something that's really hard but satisfying. Is a great sign. Like, this is really hard. Like, I don't think God calls us mainly to do easy things. So that's why the gym is a great metaphor for you don't have to feel like being in the gym, but have you ever walked out of a gym feeling like you wish you hadn't have done the workout? I mean, not many people. My dad. No, you're still, even if you can barely walk, you'll be so glad that you didn't blow it off and make up an appointment that you had to get to or something like that. So I wish I could give you some direct guidance. Get around godly people, study the Bible, pray about it, and then launch. And then if it's not what God wants you to do, maybe you'll get the response. This isn't maybe where he wants me right now.
Can I share one thing with that?
Yep.
Quiet noise. In this age, in your culture, in your demographic growing up, there's so much noise. So sometimes he's trying to call you something, but we just don't take the time to step back away from everything and listen. Like, if you're going for a run, sometimes go for a run without the next podcast. Just be out there and be still and listen.
Yeah, and I would say that's not just a younger generation, that's everybody. I mean, it's harder for everybody to be still. I mean, have you ever tried to sit still for 20 minutes, like without fidgeting? without a device, it's hard.
I was just talking to Nana, when Nene. I was just talking to him outside, like, it's so hard to you see everybody else on Instagram and stuff like that, is day trading, just crazy e-commerce and stuff like that, making them millions of dollars and stuff like that. It's so hard to stay on one thing and not to get caught up in somebody else's business. Ooh, I want to try that out and stuff like that.
But there would be a path around that. Like, it would be very hard to control all those moments throughout the day. But if you just say from this time to this time, I'm going to be quiet and still, whether it's early in the morning or late at night or whenever it is, just go, there's going to be a quarantine period where I've got to sit with myself. Yeah, I mean, it could be meditation, but it could just be the sits, where you just sit, which becomes a meditation, where I almost said exactly what you said or thought it, but I'm concerned at how many people don't have an original idea. Like, I was thinking about my kids and kids in general maybe 5 years ago, because I went to pick up my youngest at school, and there were like 7 guys and 3 girls standing there out waiting to be picked up by their parents. And they were all standing next to each other, and they were all on their phone. And it's like, I wonder if, because when I was picked up or my mom was late, I'm standing around, I either have to talk to somebody that was there, or I was daydreaming about my life. And so what happens to the brain when you only respond to stimuli? I don't have the answer for it, but I know it's different than when you're originating an idea in your imagination. So the more we do of that, I think the better. I just like to quarantine a certain period of time. It's harder for me to do the later in the day because my mind's filled with stuff from the day. It's a lot easier to get up 15 or 30 minutes earlier and do it in the morning.
Let's get one more question. You got one. We'll get to it. Make it quick.
Yeah.
What was your greatest obstacle that had to overcome?
My greatest obstacle?
What was something that was very challenging for you to overcome?
Myself. Let me see if I can have any more tangible.
Like, there was a hard time in your life, and you're like, everyone goes through this hard part.
I mean, there's so many.
Yeah.
There's so many. Let me see what
I like what you said.
oh, well, I mean, the worst, everybody is their own worst enemy, no doubt. Even on your best day. I mean, from a business standpoint, it was starting my business. So my dad had a business going. The easy thing to do would be go work for him. So I took the easy way out, right out of college, and I hated it. But then I didn't want to let my dad down. And then I could be running the business sooner than most. But I didn't like it at all. It was so boring. It wasn't what I wanted to do. So after 2 years of pretending like it was what I wanted to do, I was sitting in an office, a nice office for a 24-year-old, making $27,000, and I was probably overpaid. And I looked out the window, and there was a restaurant back in the day called LS Teca, and I saw these people drinking Monster margaritas, and it was about 3:30. I'd been traveling all week, teaching classes up in the Northeast on customer order processing and purchasing software for, that's a long story. And so I look down there, and I'm putting in my time card on an old-fashioned computer. It's DOS, it's green and white screen, big terminal, and I'm putting it in, and I look down there, and I see them drinking the margarita out my window. And then I look back up at the screen, and then I look back down at them, and I literally thought, verbatim, to hell with this. I'm 24 years old. It's 3:45 in the afternoon. I can be doing anything I want, and I'm freaking wishing that I were having a margarita. That's pathetic. So I finished filling my time card. I left and then went over to my parents' house that weekend and told my dad that I wanted to do something else. And he said, you know what? I thought that might be the case. And he goes, I did not want you to do this because of me. I only wanted you to do it because you wanted to do it. I want you to go do what will make you happy. And so 3 or 4 days later, I did the beginnings of starting my own business, which I just made up a name called Executive Performance Systems. Doesn't that sound big? So there were times that I actually was the imposter. I didn't have imposter syndrome. I was the imposter. And people I would meet people and prospects. I mean, I was cold calling. I would have an appointment, and then I would knock on doors, and I'd walk in, and I'd try to explain. It was tough. But some people would go, Executive Performance System, I think I've heard of that. And I in my head, it was like, no, you haven't. There's no way. I just made it up.
I'm going to try to articulate this question. I think that a takeaway for me after today is, in order to become the kind of person that I want to become, I need to consistently do certain things every day. How can you maintain those things while also not falling into monotony? Or is this, maybe that's just part of the question too, like, do I have to accept certain things, like whether I like it or not, I'm going to do these things? But how can I hit the things that I need to do while maintaining the flexibility to do things outside of the schedule, or think about look at each day as its own opportunity instead of boxing it into I have to do these things?
Well, you don't have to do them.
Right.
But what will the future you wish you were doing? So how old are you?
28.
So you were 23 at one point. So when you're 28 now, instead of you asking this question as a 28-year-old, ask the 35-year-old version of yourself. So that's why I think the exercise of going 5 or 10 years in the future, I like 10, because it's not like it's fixed in stone. So in that case, it'd be 38. And then you define what kind of person you want to be. And then it's pretty simple. It's just math. It's like, what do I need to do day in and day out, week in and week out, to become my future self as I've described it? Because you're going to be 38, God willing. But are you going to be 38 and with regrets that you wished you had done certain things when you were 28 that were too boring for you? And so I'd say get okay with boredom, and then create enough other events and elements in your life that aren't boring, and then work on your mindset. Not that it's a problem any more than the rest of us, but work on your mindset where you make something fun. In other words, you gamify, I'll go back to that, the monotonous daily things that you do. Now, if we're talking about your devotion in the morning or something, then that might require some deeper exploration to figure out why is that so boring to you. But you can keep your morning routine fresh. You can keep how you do rituals fresh, the things, how you make cold calls fresh. You can freshen everything. I think that's important. So I'm not saying that, but there are some things you just have to do that you wish you didn't have to do, and they're not fun, but you just do them because the future you's going to give you a big hug and say, thank you for doing these when you were 28. And imagine the 38-year-old version, just having a chip on his shoulder against you. It's like, what were you thinking at 28? Are you nuts? Did you not ever go to any events or soak up any ideas that would have told you you have to just do what you have to do to get to where you want to go? I mean, the world's filled with people who don't do what they need to do because they're bored. So it sounds like I'm picking on you, but there's a lot of parts. You don't want a boring life, but the key to having an exciting life might be to be willing to be bored for a certain period of time. And then picture the hug at 38. Thank you for doing what you did over the last 10 years.
Yeah, that's great. All right, I know we went a little over, but I mean, time well spent. Y'all give it up for Tommy real quick.